Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the FMA Dumpster Fire podcast, discussing issues we like to pretend don't exist. And today's topic is an interesting one. This is all about the purpose and the function of three fancy moves in Filipino martial arts. I like to use the term well, there I am. I'm back. Wow, live. So that's what I wanted to talk about. So first, let's talk about how they are often presented. And I think therein lies the problem when it comes to people's appreciation of flowery and fancy moves. Oftentimes, they are presented as simulations of fights, something that you can take with you on that self-defense, self-preservation journey. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The Filipino martial arts contain certain universal principles that are foundational in every martial art. But unlike, let's say, the sport of boxing or wrestling, there comparatively aren't very many ways, historically even, where Filipino martial arts concepts are examined under the microscope. And what I mean by that is, look, you can watch a boxing match, you can rewind it, and there are thousands of other boxing matches that you can examine and review. The same for jiu-jitsu, practically every combat sport. I'm talking about Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Judo. We have observable instances of things working and under what conditions, and of things failing and under what conditions. Unfortunately for, well, heck, sword fighting or weapons fighting, historical weapons fighting, we simply don't have that data. But what we can logically conclude is that there were warriors who were able to come home from battle and they recollected the things that happened within that battle, and then they reverse engineer things that work. Unfortunately, or fortunately, memory is unreliable under stress. And so what is transported back from the actual experience of war and relayed in times of peace to people who have not been there undergo severe modifications. It is unreliable to begin with. But we have to work with what we've got. And so all of these warriors over time have come back. And this is when you hear, oh, it's battle proven. You know, you should respect what has come out of Filipino martial arts because people died to acquire this knowledge. Well, just like every martial, right? Every martial art is martial to begin with, right? So it's not special in that regard, and we should scrutinize it in the same way that we scrutinize other arts, even as Filipino, especially as Filipino martial arts practitioners. So you have guy A and guy B, and they're in the battlefield, and they both have swords, and they clash, a bunch of things happen, one of them dies, the other comes back, and is tasked or is obligated to return with that knowledge and share it with people. We have to examine whether or not, again, his memory is going to be unreliable, but also the totality of his experiences is going to be limited. It's going to be limited. It's not going to represent the totality of potential eventualities when two people have swords on them. So they become selective. They choose this move over that move and that move over that move, and then they develop relative preferences over time. And these relative preferences transfer from generation to generation as techniques. And that's why the Filipino martial arts has so many techniques. There are a handful of Filipino martial arts systems that just focus on just a few techniques, right? They are more principle based. They learn a lot from sparring and trying to recreate these events as realistically as possible, fully understanding that in FMA, you can never train in a condition that is without artificialities. And you've got people who are like, well, I train with live blades. I think live blade training with a partner outside of homage to culture is absolutely bullshit. People who say, oh, I train with live blades, and they propose that as some sort of a look at how advanced I am, they're lying to you. Live blade training with a partner is the opposite of good training, and it teaches you absolutely nothing. What they propose is that, oh, we train with live blades, it gives you a healthy respect for the blade and so on and so forth. But listen, when I'm training with my guys at the boudoir, when I'm training with, experts from all around the world, we use safety training knives because then we can go hard and we can infuse intent. So when you're training, just to recap, when you're training with a training knife, you are more closely replicating or simulating to a degree, again, with artificialities. That's closer to an actual potential, right, in terms of the self-defense world. But when you're training with live blades with a partner, what you're actually trying to do is you're trying your best not to cut and hurt your training partner. So how is that in any way relevant when the exercise is entirely focused on not cutting your training partner? So anyway, that was a little bit of a divergence, but I think live blade training outside of Carenza and outside of demonstrations is completely illogical and absolutely stupid, especially when people propose it to be some sort of an elevated form of training. It is not. Do not buy into that bullshit. This is a divergence, but I bring it up because when we see flowery movements, when we see fancy, sophisticated techniques, that actually has more value than what people give it credit for. And let me explain now, after 8 minutes, only getting to the damn point of this video. But here's where I believe flowery, fancy, sophisticated movements actually help people relating to self-defense, right? So let's examine hard practice, right? Where we eradicate all sorts of fancy, flowery, sophisticated, improbable techniques. We get rid of all that. We get right down to the basics. We start off at appropriate ranges. We strike on target. We infuse increasing levels of energy and non-compliant competitive resistance in our training. And that shit sucks. It hurts. It spikes up your anxiety. You fail a lot. Hard training in Filipino martial arts is designed to make you fail. It is supposed to allow you to identify your points of failure, your deficiencies, areas that could require some improvement. And so you go hard. And this includes things like sparring, full contact stick fighting, full contact knife fighting with aluminum trainers. If you've never been friggin' hammer smashed with a pakal grip on a full contact knife match right in the clavicle, it sucks. So realistic, hard training that mimics self-defense conditions in the modern world relating to Filipino martial arts sucks. It really, really sucks, and we cannot do that every day. People who say that they train like that all the time are bullshitters. They are absolute bullshitters. They want to present to you this facade that, oh, look at us, we're tough commandos. We always go hard. We never do any of that other stuff. They're bullshitters, and I can prove it to you. Find me one person who says they train hard and fast and all the time, and I will reveal to you within 10 minutes of interviewing this guy that they're absolutely full of shit. That's not how elite fighters train. That's not how the best soldiers in the world train. That's not how elite combat sports athletes train. That's not how soldiers train. That's not how anyone actually trains, but you'll have no shortage of Filipino martial artists and other martial artists proposing to you that we train as we fight, fight as we train, blah, 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 blah. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Do not fall for it. But the thing about training in that way once in a while, appropriate to your condition, appropriate to your training goals, is that they are absolutely, supremely valuable. So here we have a valuable training method, right? Sparring, scenario training, compartmentalized, non-collaborative drilling, that kind of stuff. That's on one side. Rolling, right? And you're really trying to go after each other. That's on one side. And on the other side, you have carenza, you have patterns, you have formula, you have super, super consensual partner drills. And let me diverge for a second. Another deception in Filipino martial arts is that when people do these hyper consensual, super collaborative feeder partner drills, when you elevate that speed and you can even fake intensity, it looks so good. It looks so good, but it's no different than a choreography, right? You're just doing that dance a little bit faster. And so to the untrained eye, that could look really cool. And I'm not really ragging on it as far as its cool factor, right? Its ability to help promote the arts. I'm not hating on that one bit. Never mind the fact that they're really, really fun. Okay, I'm not saying they're useless, but they have a limited training value beyond the initial phase of acquiring that new skill set. You should always be evolving from that fundamental drill and finding ways to break it. Not to say you can't go back, particularly if you're going to teach this material, it makes sense to revisit it so that you have a continued understanding of what beginners may go through and that you can effectively teach that stuff. But other than that, you got to break these drills. So again, on the one side, you have hard practice, sparring, rolling, fighting in some instances. And then on the other side, you have carenza, flowery movements, consensual partner drills, and I call them air guitar drills because really it's air guitar drills. And I mean no disrespect. I just want to be kind of real and a little bit funny with it. They're air guitar drills, right? I'm not saying they're not useful. But how are these two worlds complementary? They seem contradictory, don't they? They seem like you have to choose hard practice, sparring, fighting, or you choose kind of this path that is oftentimes ridiculed, right? And I say you don't need to choose. Not only can you do both, but if you understand how one helps the other, and I'm taking my time, but I'm going to explain that to you. When you have this hard practice, right, we've established that you can't do that all the time. It sucks. It spikes up your anxiety. You're constantly in a state of failure. And the risk for injury in hard practice, especially when you're dealing with aluminum training knives and hard contact, is incredibly high, right? I've broken my hand multiple times. I've broken my elbow multiple times. I've sprained more joints than I can count. It frigging sucks. But it's supremely important, this kind of training. So what do we do in understanding that these hard skills are perishable? Meaning over time, if you don't continue to do these things, these skill sets are going to go away. So how the heck are we supposed to solve that problem where we have a set of practices that are supremely valuable, but that we can't do all the time, and that will perish if we don't? Ta-da! Well, here comes your flowery, fancy, sophisticated, collaborative drills. And all this is doing is it's slowing down the process of degradation. It's mitigating the perishability of the things you learn in hard practice. If you have the, oh God, I'm going to say mindset. Damn it, I hate using that word. But if you have the sense to understand exactly what it is you're doing, we can take something like explosive footwork, things like that, which is critical in hard practice, not necessarily explosive footwork, I should say explosivity. You can train explosivity to some degree by yourself in solo practice. The fact that you're moving, the fact that hopefully some of these flowery, sophisticated motions mimic or is similar enough to some of the things that you'd be doing in hard practice, you'll be effectively mitigating the degradation. Another thing that fancy, flowery, sophisticated items in Filipino martial arts helps us with is simply a brain challenge. Something to do on our own, something to do with our friends, and it's friggin' fun. It's fun clacking sticks and pretending to be jungle warriors. That stuff's healthy, and if it keeps you long enough into the system for that next cycle of hard practice to come around. And by the way, I would propose 4 times a year. 4 times a year, hard practice, you're good to go. Once every quarter is probably more than enough, right? If you're maintaining a certain standard of fitness, if you're just keeping up with things, you don't need to be like sparring and going hardcore more than 4 times a year, in my opinion, particularly as you get older, right? If you're a younger kid, great, go have at it, man. You recover way faster than a 41-year-old like me, and certainly way faster than some of my 50, 60, 70-year-old friends. So this is the purpose. This is the purpose of these flowery movements, these fancy techniques, these less probable things. As long, this is the key, man. As long as you don't kid yourself, and if you're an instructor, you don't deceive your students by saying things like, oh, if I get a stab like this, I'm going to do that. That's just dishonest, right? When you start proposing with a stick that, abanicos have stopping power, that's kind of ridiculous. Now, are there practitioners in Filipino martial arts that can generate stopping power with their abanicos? For certain. But it's likely that that person has some built-in, physical natural tendencies, or that they just train the abanico a whole lot, probably a lot more than you are, for them to be able to make it their go-to. So in short, the purpose of flowery, sophisticated techniques in Filipino martial arts isn't that we're ever going to come across an eventuality exactly like that, right? First of all, no one's knife dueling. I don't care what anyone says. No one's knife dueling out there. Nobody's machete dueling. And yes, I'm going to get links in the comments about, well, in Colombia, in the Philippines, in Malaysia, there is. Even in those countries, they are extremely rare. Even where they are more common, they are extremely rare. I don't care what anybody says. You can look at the numbers, and the numbers will never reflect that knife dueling or machete dueling is such a big social problem. It's just not the case. And so, we put so much emphasis on the Filipino martial arts, every element of the Filipino martial arts, to hold some sort of supreme self-defense value. And we just have to be real with ourselves and enjoy the art without expecting too much out of this, right? It's already giving us so much. these flowery, sophisticated puzzles are already giving us so much. We don't need to demand for it to be more. It's already doing great things for exercise, for our well-being, for our mental health, to pay honor to the arts, history, and culture of the Philippines, for artistic self-expression, a way to, express ourselves and to be able to share that with people. That's enough. That is way more than enough. We don't also need it to save our life just in case. And so that's where the problem comes in, is when these Filipino martial arts instructors present these ideas to be life-saving. I'm going to cut off his hand. It's a little bit ridiculous. I think in some ways it's cool, right? And I know some really smart Filipino martial arts instructors who still get in the zone, right? When they still go, yeah, do this and just cut off his wrist. And, what are you talking about, man? Cut off his wrist and then cut his neck and then go around him and stab him. So I get it. That's what you're showing, right? It's just how you present these things matter. And I'm pretty sure that the Filipino martial arts is good enough. It's good enough as an art that not every item from it needs to be practical. And I'm speaking for myself. I live in Toronto, in Canada, right? So yeah, I'm in a bubble. It's relatively safe out here. Definitely there are no knife duels happening just outside of me. There's no machete battles going on outside of me. And so even as I say this, I want to make sure that you filter everything I say through your own personal conditions, who you are, where you are, what your role is. And just examine these fancy, improbable crap as, sorry, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. Sorry, FMA, it's not crap. You know what I mean, right? Like, I don't want to have to filter myself, because it is absolutely being presented as bullshit. And this is what makes us incredibly easy to attack by these combatives experts who fucking know the deal, to be honest. They know the shit that we're doing is improbable. So we present as improbable. Well, we're just presenting the weakest, the weakest link in the chain. And we're saying, here, attack this. And look, I love the Filipino martial arts, but I will never defend that shit under that context. I will never defend something that is like improbable, fancy, sophisticated, and isn't even within the realm of, good enough solutions. I'm never going to present that. I'm never going to defend that shit, And I don't care if you tell me a story about that one time that it saved your life. Because memory is unreliable under stress, and you probably did something completely different. And you want so desperately to validate these things that your master taught you. And I think that's just wrong, And I hope there are some Filipino martial arts instructors out there undergoing a level of reflection right now as they read this, because I'm telling you, you're not doing FMA any friggin' favors by sensationalizing and overvaluing these concepts. You are not. All right, you can just be honest with it, because that in and of itself, like I said before, man, it's way more than enough, right? It's like, it's ridiculous. It's like, I'm a tap dancer, but did you know that I can also crush grapes with the same techniques? Who fucking cares? Duh. Come on, that's kind of ridiculous, right? I'm a tap dancer, but these are grape crushing feat. They have a practical value outside of the art. It's silly. And that's more or less what we're doing with Filipino martial arts. So with that, I leave you. 25 minutes is more than enough. Shout out to Integrative Defense Strategies, man. Like, that, my homie Todd Fossey has never taken a Filipino martial arts lesson in all his life, even though he trains with Greg Nelson. So, maybe I'm nudging you a little bit to train it. If for nothing else, as a challenge to your mind, people love music. There's nothing that is more rewarding for me sometimes than just listening to a familiar song or even a brand new song, and I get to dance with my sword to it, And, once in a while, I may throw a boxing shuffle in there. I may throw a quarter turn, right? I may throw a 1-2 within the framework of expressing myself artistically with music. So, but that's all it is, right? That's all it is. It's nothing more than that, as far as relevance to self-defense anyways. So, learn Filipino with Papa Jetter. Agree, always keep it honest. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Eventually, I hope to make this podcast scheduled. I want to put some limitations on time to freaking ramble sometimes. I want to have some guests over. So holla at me. I'm going to make this all about Filipino martial arts, but I'll be damned if I only have Filipino martial artists here, because FMA is everything. It is everywhere. It has gripped my life, and it has become the catalyst for me to filter all other fighting input, right? And I just choose to keep that shit as honest as possible. And I hope you do too. And I hope you continue to train Filipino martial arts. I hope you continue to honor, the history, the culture, the artistic contribution of the Philippines to the world. This is by far our single greatest export. For me, this is our single greatest contribution to the world right now. So please train it honestly, train it realistically, sometimes train it authentically, and above all else, in your training, be honest with yourself, be honest with your students, and enjoy the art. And with that, I'm going to end this with what I propose to be either the intro song to the podcast or the outro song. Have a listen, okay?
Putang animal, putang animal, putang animal, putang animal. You got TT and Peck and Lumpia. TT, Peck and Lumpia. Ba-ding, 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 da-ding, da-ding, ding. Ba-ding, 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 da-ding, da-ding, ding. Putang animal, putang animal.